computer. Okay, now I've got to go. Oh, you ready? Okay, welcome everybody back to the Crack the Code podcast. I'm Cora Naylor, and today we're here with Rusti Lehay. Rusti is a global editor and book writing coach. She's created over 40 articles guiding writers to authordom. As a result of Rusti's events and unique book coaching techniques, writers generate a large body of work, many becoming published authors. Her collaborative, immersive editing methods ensure writers retain artistic control. Using an empathetic, heart-centered approach, authors and novice writers increase their confidence to independently craft and tweak their writing projects. So welcome, Rusti.
Hi, Cora. Great to be here with you today.
Oh, super excited. I know I was a speaker at one of your events at a Stay Treat. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end. And I never really thought of myself as a writer. I couldn't believe how much writing I did.
You did amazing. And I hear that from quite a few people. I'm not a writer, especially the special guests. And they, wow, I really did write.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, have you always been a writer?
Yes. My mother loved words and would send me to the dictionary for words. And I fell in love with reading dictionaries when I was young. And that can lead me into problems in that I often will pronounce words and all the reading that I do just in my own head. I've never learned how to pronounce them out here. So some people go, what's that word you just said? So my sister and I argue about reticent and reticent.
Yes. I have two kids that are English majors, and sometimes words are a topic at our place too. I can totally get that. And so today we're just going to share maybe some of your backstory, maybe a little snippet about how you got into writing, and then we're going to get into some challenges and talk about a book that you're working on and what led you to that.
All right. Well, writing for me has been a health tool. It's been a self-analysis tool. I believe that the pen is mightier than the therapist, and I have had some really good therapists, so it's no insult to them. I wouldn't be where I am right now without them. But I also know that I did a lot of soul searching on the pages of my journal. And that is the one place you can go that's totally private. You can write to yourself and never show it to anyone. You can write and find, oh, this sounds pretty good. Maybe I can use it as a blog. I have been writing since I picked up pen pals on a trip to Mexico when I was 10 years old, a road trip. And every campground I'd go and I'd find other kids to play with after being stuck in the car all day long with my three nephews that were the same age as me, same ages.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. And so moving along, now you have one son you were mentioning to me, and I know I've got two sons. I've got twin boys, and I think we had a similar journey in that raising the boys was easy, and as they got older, the challenges became more challenging.
I do say that my son can be the most morose little SO something something on the planet because I'm the something something that birthed him, and I can say that. But he was an easy child, but as an adult, he struggles with keeping his mood upbeat and brain chemistry kind of balanced. And there have been some very fearful times. It's not easy for a parent to watch a child go through emotional distress and not knowing how to cultivate his own joy. That is a gift for those of us who are predisposed to cheerfulness. And I have to say, I'm one of those that probably has that glowing spot in front center of my brain where serotonin is created. And so it's easy for me. And it's hard to not know how to help someone who doesn't have that ability to just cultivate joy.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of women, a lot of people just who are looking outward for it, and that has to kind of come from within. So it's nice that there's a lot of different methods to find joy. I do help people releasing emotions, and like you say, writing is very therapeutic. There's so many different options. So I love how you can help people through writing. Yeah,
I really like what you were just saying about, releasing the emotions, because I have thought about how my son might totally benefit from doing some emotion code release. He's very angry at his father. And you mentioned my book. I've been playing around with one title for it, To the Sons of Angry Mothers, my writing compassion into the past, or, my mistakes with men, owning up to them. Because I did some of the damage to my relationship with my son. And thankfully, we've healed that. We do well now. But he read something this weekend and he sent the quote to me. It was a quote by Nietzsche about be careful about who you call your enemies, because that is who you're most likely to become. And he thought, I have been becoming my father. And so I think there's light at the end of the tunnel for me, that he's starting to make some realizations, and he's starting to speak more in some I language instead of he, which is victim. He did this, she did that. It's a victim, and there's no power there. If he can start seeing things like that, then maybe he might be able to do some release work, and maybe there is some hope here that I'm going to hold on to tightly, and wait patiently, and be there, hopefully with some universally guided words of wisdom when the opportunities come up, because I find those are some of the best conversations I've had with him, is when something just comes up in the moment. If you think of something later, it doesn't really work to go back then, because the moment is gone. So when I think of something in the moment and I follow my intuition, that's where we've had some breakthroughs.
yeah. And that is the tricky part. It's having it in the moment, for sure. I know with my kids, that's been a struggle as well. And but it's nice, like you say, when he came with that quote, that's the little crack. And sometimes that just means that, yeah, something's shifting within them, and you're going to be able to have that conversation. Because when we have kids, no one gives us an owner's manual. We always wish, oh, if we could only go back and redo. And there's no redo. Unfortunately, we do the best we can as a parent while we're raising our kids, and just cross our fingers. Because you don't really know what's going to happen until they're grown up. It's a long time to wait.
Yeah, it is. And how interesting it is that your podcast name is Crack the Code, because it is like we speak in code language to each other. That's why I love words so much, because when we can pay attention to what words people are using, we can speak into their listening. And my sister has a saying about how when somebody's front door is barred and locked, you can't get in that way. But when a side door opens and there's a code there that you can start speaking into. And so I just said to my son when he came up with that quote, and I said, that's really interesting that are thinking that way. I wonder if the start to, being able to have some more positives in your life is to just find one thing, the tiniest little thing that you can be grateful for with your father. Because I went through something similar with my mother, and that he has with his father. And I said, just finding this one little thing opened the doorway to find another little thing and another little thing. It's like a bread trail crumb trip that you need to actually drop and find your own breadcrumbs to find your way to forgiveness, whatever that might look for you.
Yeah, so important. And there is always something to be grateful for, and some learning from every opportunity or anything, that challenge that happens to us. It's not always a bad thing. It's just sometimes we need to learn it. And what can we take away from that going forward? And that helps us to be a better person too. So I'm curious, in your book that you're writing, is it like a personal story, or will you be having tips for people?
There's a really neat thing about that happening right now, that prescriptive memoirs are actually being looked at more seriously by publishers. And so it's going to be a memoir and personal, but the way that I'm writing it, looking at my part in all of the relationships, because that, that, that couldn't have happened to me without me. And so I'm a part of it. I'm a part of every interaction, every interpersonal dynamic that I have been involved in. And so to look at it from, what did I do to bring that about? What did I do to invite that? What did I do to exacerbate that situation? And there's a story I tell about after my divorce, and my sister was tired of me being angry and the victim of my son's father. And she said, we're not going until you sit down and write all the ways you were at fault in your marriage. I swore, maybe. I don't swear now. And she had me right where she needed me to deliver this ultimatum, because she had the car, she had the keys, and I hate being late. So fine. I grabbed my pen and my journal and I'm writing. And just the act of starting it took me down trails that I had no idea, to look at it from a different point of view. And so that's what I call my workshops, writing compassion into the past. Because when we look at things through a different lens, when we invite conversations with ghosts, which is one of the names of one of the chapters, because my son's father died 11 years ago, and I started looking at part of our story through his eyes and having a conversation with the ghost on the pages of my manuscript. And I started seeing things that I never, ever, ever saw or even got close to imagining were possible. Like, one example is that his daughter from his first marriage died in our car accident in 1979. We never talked about the fact that I was driving, that he was too drunk to drive, that I was an inexperienced driver. We never talked about the first incident of a sexual act between me and him that was more like a date rape than consent. And my mother said, well, you did it, now you get married, type thing, and gave him the engagement ring from my father off her hand and said, make it legal. So didn't even have a proposal to say no to. But I never ever thought about all the pain he was going through, about losing a child. He certainly didn't want to risk losing another child ever. So he was maybe afraid of getting me pregnant. He chose my most infertile times to initiate sex, because I never dealt with the first incident that was more like an assault, and it was not making love, and that he didn't hear my no. And he was so much in pain at that point too, from some other things that were going on in his life at that time, that every time there was a sexual act, it was like I was reliving the trauma of my childhood and also that first incident. And I just was working with one of my authors who's a urologist, and she's talking about the brain and the amygdala and the hypothalamus, the pituitary and the cortisol and the aldosterone, that all impedes a woman's ability to lubricate and to be ready for sexual pleasure. And so all those years I went to doctors who said, relax, go home, use lubricant. No, there was more going on, and they never looked into it.
Yeah.
So when our bodies are not functioning, go and be assertive with those darn doctors and tell them, no, I'm not doing that. There's nothing wrong, that way, but there's something else that's wrong, and they need you to look further.
Yeah.
And so that's one of my biggest things to tell other women is, like, don't accept an answer that doesn't feel right or doesn't make any change.
Yeah. And we've been talking about that on some of my previous episodes. It's really important to listen to your body. And if you're not getting the answers, maybe from traditional methods, look for other methods, because there's so many ways we can heal our body. And unfortunately, some of the traditional medicine isn't really at that point. They'll help us with the pain and, band-aiding it, but they don't always get to the root of the problem. So that's really important. Which makes me kind of go back to another story that me and you had talked about, was a health issue that you had a couple of years ago. Because I know, and when women, we get older, middle age, a lot of people are complaining about different things. The body's not working right, but often we just write off what's happening to us. And it's so important to look after ourselves. Maybe you can share a little bit about what happened with you and how you got past that and what you did.
I'm wondering, because I think we talked about more than one thing. Are you talking about breast cancer in 2003, or just how my body started feeling like it's aging and I don't want it to age?
Yeah,
Like,
I think that one.
that one.
That's a
Okay.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the other
no,
one's good too. That's a whole nother story.
it is a whole other story. Well, in March of 2021, I had always prided myself that I could, cross my feet and I could rise from a sitting position on the floor without using my hands. And I could sit down. You know how babies and toddlers sit down on their haunches effortlessly and play with their toys and stuff? They're not sitting on their bum is on their calves type thing. And I couldn't do that anymore. It was so painful and inflammation in my joints. And I thought, that's it. I am only 61. This is not acceptable. I made a 3-day promise to have no sugar. And I did a little chart of the days and the meals in the day. And I did a little woohoo with colored pens and felt markers and highlighters to every time I, resisted sugar. And I was teaching my writing class in person at that point. And two of the women, they have their birthdays at the end of the March, and they brought in some poppy seed cupcakes. They have sugar, right?
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, this is lovely, but I can't have it. I've made a promise to not have any sugar for 3 days." "Oh, well, you can have that." I went, "No, because if I break my promise, where does my self-esteem go?" And I said, "But I tell you what, it'll still be great, 3 days from now, and I'll send you a picture of me having it with a cup of tea on a plate." And I'm going to now apologize to Janet because I sent the picture, but I actually let my son eat it because at the end of those 3 days, I enjoyed the tea. At the end of those 3 days, I was so successful that I continued going on. And at that point, I was in all of the athletic wear that's stretchy,
Yeah.
and I could not fit into my, favorite clothes. I'm only 5 foot tall, and 5 pounds on my size, on my height, is a whole size. Since March of 2021, I am now 22 pounds lighter, and my body is still settling and still looking like it might go down even further to find its happy place. And so sugar still will be present in my life in a more lax way than what it was with those 3 days promise and the months that followed. But I can now get up and down off the floor easily. I can sit on my haunches. I do yoga every day since December 13th of last year. I've been doing yoga every day with the exception of 3 missed days when I was moving. And I'm doing chin-ups and push-ups daily. So life is good.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so important to do movement. I have a program that I love on TV if people or that I watch on the internet if people want to watch it. It's called Eccentrics TV, and it's really about aging gracefully and just keeping everything lubricated, all the joints. It's very gentle. And yoga is fantastic. Get off the couch. It doesn't take a lot, but it's amazing the results you can get. And using stuff that's really going to help you for going forward, like movement that is functional. So, stuff for reaching into cupboards or so that you don't fall down. If you fall down, you can get back up again, because I hear a lot of women in our age breaking wrists and ankles because we can't just quickly get up and down.
I wrote an article about that a few years ago about sarcopenia, vanishing flesh. It's the Greek word for vanishing flesh. And when we don't use our leg muscles anymore, our quads and our hamstrings, then we can't catch ourselves from falling over. If you were to, and what I suggested is to hang on to the edge of your sink and do a squat. And then don't do another one of those for 3 days. If you're feeling your leg muscles within 2 days, or you're thinking that somebody has lowered the toilet who did that, then you only want to do one every 3 or 4 days until your leg muscles get stronger, because it's those muscles that save us from falling and breaking our hips, and probably from our wrists too. I mean, how many women do I know recently that have fallen and broken their wrists? Georgiana, I think you and I both know her. Somebody else, one of my guest speakers a few months ago, had broken her wrist. It's keep our legs strong, and stay strong. Find movement that you enjoy doing.
Yes. There's so many options out there. People say, "Oh, I don't like going to the gym." You do not need to go to the gym.
2 water bottles.
Yeah. But
And
also, it doesn't mean you have to do weights or run on the treadmill. There are so many ways you can be active. Just get out there exploring and try things until you find something that clicks for you.
I have a little stepper under my desk.
That's awesome. So as we're just wrapping up here, Rusti, maybe you can share with us, when do you think your book's going to be coming out? Do you have any date for that, or?
I have enough words and enough stories in it to now start working on all of the putting it together and in order, and telling what each part is, like what point of view it's from, and then writing the prescriptive part of like, this is how I got myself out of that. So I'm thinking in April of 2023 might be a launch date.
Oh, that's super exciting. And in the meantime, if you have never thought you couldn't write or you want to try writing, I highly recommend that you take a look at Rusti's, she calls them stay treats. We stay home and we work from home on Zoom writing. And people write about all kinds of things at these stay treats.
There've been fiction and biography and science and PhDs and marketing copy and health writing and a lot of memoir, some fantasy, and what boggles some people's minds is one woman is writing self-help in the form of fantasy that people are going, how is it going to be self-help? And I know, but we can't tell.
That's super cool. So if people, the listeners, want to get in touch with you or learn more about your stay treats or your monthly writing lounges, what's the best way to do that?
I am on most social media with my name, Rusti, with an I, not a Y. So it's a name, not a condition. Lehay, Lehay, Rusti. On LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook is Rusti Lee. And my website is rustilehay.info.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being with us here today, Rusti. And everyone, if you're listening and you have a little twig of them, maybe you can do some writing, join Rusti's Stay Treat, or if you need to get off the couch and do some movement, like we've been talking about that today too, just get out there and do it, because it is never too late.
Agreed. Never too late.